The original Jumanji is a movie I grew up watching as a kid. I love it. I have so much nostalgia for it. And I was planning on doing a review for it before Welcome to the Jungle came out, and then all of a sudden I got to see Welcome to the Jungle a couple weeks early. So here it is, the review for Welcome to the Jungle already. The first thing I like about Welcome to the Jungle is that it's not a remake of the original. It takes the continuity from the first one. So the events that happened in the first movie still happen in this movie. So in some way it's a sequel, almost more of a spin-off of the first movie, which I enjoy. I like the little Easter eggs that they had plopped in this movie, but it's not essential to the movie. This is easily a movie you can watch without ever seeing the first movie. There are some confusing things they did with the video game aspect, but a lot of it can be overlooked just because this movie's not a great film. You know, it's not going to be remembered in 10 years, but it is a fun time. I feel like The Rock and Kevin Hart are two actors that don't necessarily make classic, timeless pieces of cinema, but they make fun movies that are enjoyable, and there's nothing wrong with that, you know? This isn't a movie I think I'm gonna have a nostalgia for like the first one. But it's a fun, disposable movie, yes, and obviously we want movies to strive to be better than just disposable. But there's nothing wrong with going to a theater and spending 2 hours having a lot of fun watching a movie. Even if it's something that you're not going to remember in a year or a day. That being said, they do a lot with this movie that I didn't expect happening. I went in with tempered expectations. I was hoping it would just be at least a fun time, if not a good movie, and it was even better than I expected. The Rock plays against type, where he's a big badass dude, but he's like a little 15-year-old white nerdy kid. And I really enjoy that he's freaking out. He's not so brave going into this movie. There's some moments where I feel like they kind of prioritize action more than his character, but throughout this whole movie, he's like scared of things. You know, The Rock is going around in the jungle with like all these animals, and then he sees a squirrel and he's terrified. And it's funny to see him play against type. Same thing with Jack Black. Jack Black is probably the standout in this movie. I thought his character was going to be really annoying from the trailers, where he was just this, you know, 16-year-old girl that's self-obsessed with her phone and everything, Instagram, Snapchat, all that crap, and then he turns into, or she turns into, a middle-aged overweight man. And I expected that to be just the entire character, but her character is given so much more depth in this movie than I expected. And it's not like an Oscar-worthy writing amount of depth like Lady Bird. But it's, you know, it's fun, and there's more to her character than just being self-obsessed, and they play with that a lot, and Jack Black has a lot of fun in this role. Gillan is surprisingly good in this movie. I'm not a fan of her as an actress, typically. I think she's kind of the worst part of both of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. As Nebula, she's awful in those. But she was good in this movie, you know? She was fun. She plays this shy girl that's stuck inside of her video game, her body. Talking about this movie is confusing. She's charming in it. She works for this movie, and I can't complain about it. I thought she was good. She worked. Kevin Hart, however, is just Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart never plays a character. He's always just Kevin Hart. And he's funny. You know, he adds to the movie. And I'm a little fatigued by Kevin Hart. You know, I enjoy him in movies. He's funny, but he's just, it's so one note. Like, yeah, Kevin Hart making fun of his height and how he's scared of things a lot, and that's Kevin Hart. Just, well, yeah. That was him in Central Intelligence and every other movie he's ever been in his life. I feel like, especially in this movie, it would have worked fine if the kid that's supposed to be inside Kevin Hart's body is like Kevin Hart. But in the real world, the kid that embodies Kevin Hart, he's like this football playing, you know, like jock who is not very talkative, you know, he's not very outgoing that we've seen, you know, he's not a jokey, funny dude, but all of a sudden when he goes into this movie, his personality completely changes into Kevin Hart. And I feel like when they cast Kevin Hart in this movie, obviously I feel like they casted the four video game leads before they casted the 4 kids. I feel like it's a mistake on the filmmaker's part not to find a kid that was more like Kevin Hart, rather than trying to make Kevin Hart act like this kid that they already casted, you know? So I feel like that was a mistake. They should have had the kid be different in the real life. I think the kid was fine in the real life, and I enjoyed that his character was different than the others, kind of. And so I kind of wish that they just replaced Kevin Hart. But if you're going to get Kevin Hart, you got to get a kid that acts like Kevin Hart. Otherwise, it just stands out and it doesn't work for his character. So I thought that was a big flaw as far as characters and stuff. There's also another character that comes in later in the movie that I thought was interesting. I really like how it kind of, his character ties in, tonally at least, and story plot-wise with the first Jumanji movie. And I don't want to spoil much beyond that. But it was a fun addition. I kind of expected it, honestly, because from the trailers I saw this one character going in, and then early in the movie I saw that, you know, set up for what that character might be, and I was like, oh, well, that's what it's gonna be, and it was that, you know. But they hit it pretty well in the trailers, honestly, and it's just kind of me looking at it from that perspective going in. But his character works well in this movie. I really like where they took it with him. I've heard people complain a little bit of the egregious cameo that's at the end of this movie. And I'm like, is that a cameo? Really? I mean, he's not a big famous actor, you know. There's a cameo that's at the end of this movie, and it's not really a cameo though. It's just kind of a dude playing a role, and it's not like a necessarily big Hollywood actor. He's well known more for his connection to other actors, the person that shows up at the end, but I don't feel like he stood out, especially for me. I was like, oh, that's that actor, okay. And that was it, you know? Like, I mean, I feel like other people, other reviewers that I really like and respect, that I watched, like Chris Stuckman, I think, mentioned that in his video. I don't think he went as hard in on it as some other reviews that I saw, but I was like, yeah, okay. I mean, he's not like a distracting actor to me, but okay, I thought he was just a dude playing a role, and I thought it was fine. So I don't understand that critique that a lot of people have. I know I'm off topic here because that's not a critique of my own, but it's just a response in case you saw any other reviews. I don't think it's as distracting, and I think a lot of people might not even recognize him, honestly. You know, he's not as big of a name as the person he's connected with, you know? But this movie does have a lot of fun with the video game convention of it. Each character has strengths and weaknesses, and I thought that they play with that very well throughout the movie, and it's a lot of fun. Kevin Hart's weakness is cake. And the way that they play with that, it's funny. It's funny. There's a lot of fun to be had with the way that they approach these strengths and weaknesses, and it makes it feel like it's a video game. There's everything about this movie, like they even have like non-player characters, you know, NPCs from video games, where it's basically a person that's just a robot, basically, that the player can interact with a little bit, choose from certain lines of dialogue, and when they talk to them in this movie, like, they only have a limited amount of things that they can actually say to get a response from, otherwise they just keep repeating the same line. And they have a lot of fun with this. There's cutscenes in the movie. It feels like a video game, and as far, I mean, I know it doesn't necessarily count as a video game movie, because Jumanji's not traditionally a video game, you know, it's not based off of a video game, but with the conventions that they play with in it, it's really fun, you know, as far as video games go. Like, I think this is probably the best, and it's an accurate representation of how video games react in real life. And just as a fan of a lot of video games, played a lot of video games growing up, still play video games today, I enjoy that the filmmakers behind this knew what they were talking about. They didn't just make random crap up. And again, I know Chris Stuckman kind of went into this in his video, which I kind of disagree with, is that he talked about how, and I know I'm not trying to just make a response to Chris Stuckman, I'm just critiquing another critic almost. Where in his review he mentions that in a video game, things aren't rendered outside of what the players see. So aside from cutscenes, there's no reason that you should see cutaways of the villain doing things on the other side of the island. However, in this movie, the way I explain it in this world is that this world exists. Slight spoiler here, but the world that they're in is the world that Alan Parrish, the Robin Williams character from the first movie, went to whenever he was trapped in the board game. It's that same world, it just has new ways of defining it, and it changes and updates itself pretty much, where now it has these NPC robot type characters, and it has these strengths and weaknesses that play into it. But the world of Jumanji is still the same world that Robin Williams was in. So I feel like the fact that things aren't rendered whenever you're near them, it kind of, I don't feel like the laws necessarily affect the environment of the world. I think the laws just kind of affect what happens inside the world. And that is a valid criticism, I guess, of the NPC villain characters off on the side, you know, doing their own thing. That's valid there. This world isn't taking place inside of a computer processor from what we understand. It's a weird portal to an alternate reality is the way I look at it. That being said, I would have liked to see, if this is a world that Alan Parrish had been in, I would have liked to see some of the things that we saw in the original Jumanji movie, like the little bugs with the long stingers that attack like the cop car at the beginning, or the plants that shoot that venom or whatever that knocks out Kirsten Dunst at the end and has all the growing limbs and stuff. I would have liked to see these weird creatures and stuff that they set up in the first Jumanji movie in this movie, and they didn't really do that. It just kind of made it a normal, typical jungle, except for this glowy gem thing, and that was pretty much it. So while this movie might have some flaws, my biggest hang-up being Kevin Hart's character, I think that it's a lot of fun. You're looking for a fun family movie going into the holiday season. I think Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle will be a great time with your family and kids. There are some adult jokes in it, but I don't think younger kids will understand it. There's a lot of mentioning Jack Black's penis in it, but he's playing like a girl trapped inside his body, so it's funny for the movie. It's just, you know, maybe not entirely kid appropriate, but that's, you know, it's a fun family movie. I'd say anyone 10 or older, bring them for the holidays. You're gonna have a fun time. I'd give Jumanji, for what it is, I'd give Jumanji a 7.5 out of 10. It's a fun movie. It's mostly disposable. You'll probably forget about it, but there's nothing wrong with having a fun movie. Anyway, guys, that's just my thoughts. If you have your own thoughts, leave them down in the comments below. I'm interested in seeing what you guys think about it. And make sure to leave a like and subscribe because I have a lot more reviews coming out soon. Thank you. Goodbye. I just did like a weird vlogger Tobuscus thing. Ooh, Tobuscus, yeah. Is he still alive?
That was so intense. I can't even with this place.
Watch your step in here.